Welcome to Storycraft Portal, where we take you deep into the shadows of real-life horror, exposing the dark corners of the human mind. Today's story isn't just shocking, it's the untold beginning of one of the most infamous serial killers in history, Jeffrey Dahmer. But this isn't about the crimes you've heard before. This is about the first crime nobody talks about. The moment a seemingly ordinary 18-year-old took a path that would lead to pure evil. In 1978, Dahmer picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. What followed was a chilling act of violence that marked the birth of a monster. This isn't just a true crime story. It's the terrifying first spark in a dark psychological horror that the world never saw coming. Are you ready to confront the forgotten beginning of one of history's darkest souls? It was June 1978. The sun was dipping low as 18-year-old Jeffrey Dahmer drove slowly along a quiet Ohio highway. The air was thick with heat and silence until he saw him. A young man, Stephen Hicks, thumbing for a ride, unaware he was about to meet true crime history. Jeffrey pulled over with a calm smile, hiding a chaos bubbling inside. They talked. Music, life, plans, just two young men bonding over the road. But Jeffrey wasn't interested in the journey. He was already planning the end. As the car rolled toward Dahmer's isolated home, Stephen had no idea he was walking into the clutches of what would become dark psychological horror. This wasn't just a ride. It was the first move in a sinister game. The tension grows, and a question looms. What does a monster look like before he becomes one? Jeffrey's house stood alone, swallowed by thick trees and unsettling silence. As Stephen stepped inside, he noticed the odd stillness. No sounds, no pictures, no warmth. Just walls that seemed to breathe with secrets. Jeffrey offered him a drink, and they sat awkwardly. Small talk turned shallow, and the silence between words grew heavier. Dark psychological horror wasn't just in books, it lived here. Hicks, oblivious, played dumbbells in the corner, stretching muscles, still joking. But Jeffrey wasn't laughing. Inside, he battled urges he didn't understand, shadows whispering louder each second. The drink Stephen sipped dulled his edge. That's when it clicked. Jeffrey didn't want him to leave. This wasn't about company. It was about control. That stillness? It was the breath before storm. Hicks smiled politely, unaware this visit wouldn't end with a goodbye. Stephen eventually stood, stretching again, smiling, saying it was time to go. Those words hit Jeffrey like a hammer. Leave? He couldn't let that happen. He calmly asked Stephen to stay a bit longer. When Stephen declined again, a darkness flickered behind Jeffrey's eyes. The room felt colder. Jeffrey walked to a shelf, grabbed a dumbbell, as casually as picking up a cup. He came behind Stephen as if to chat, but his grip tightened, and with one sudden, horrifying motion, he struck. The sound wasn't cinematic. It was dull, wet, and real. Stephen gasped, staggered. Another blow, then silence. Jeffrey stood over him, breath heavy, shaking, not with regret but confusion. Something inside him had snapped. His first kill wasn't calculated, it was primal. The room was dead silent now, more silent than ever. A lifeless body lay crumpled on the floor, and Jeffrey Dahmer, only 18, stood in the stillness he had created. His hands trembled as he dragged the body to the basement, feet thudding on each wooden stair. It wasn't over. Panic and curiosity twisted inside him. He stared at Stephen's body for hours, detached as if studying something alien. Then came the saw, the bags, the plan to erase it all. Dismemberment wasn't rage, it was method, and each cut felt like understanding himself better. It was not just murder, it was something darker, deeper. He preserved bones, cleaned the mess, and burned what he could. His only fear? Being caught, not guilt. The killer was born not in the moment of violence, but in the quiet after. Days passed, then weeks. No police, no questions. Jeffrey Dahmer walked among people like nothing had happened. He shopped, ate dinner with his family, laughed at jokes, and kept a part of Stephen Hicks hidden in his crawl space. His monster wore a mask of normalcy. His father noticed he was quiet, but what teenager isn't? Jeffrey kept the secret beneath layers of politeness and silence. But inside, his thoughts were loud, obsessive, replaying that night, craving it again. He began drinking heavily, not to forget, but to numb the waiting. School meant nothing. Future plans felt fake. All that mattered was that feeling, that power. It didn't haunt him. It called to him. He didn't feel evil. He felt free. Years passed, but inside Jeffrey, nothing healed. Something darker festered. After high school, he joined the army, tried to be normal, but his urges didn't fade, they evolved. He drank more, distanced himself, isolated in barracks, haunted by Stephen Hicks, his first murder. Discharge came quickly. Alcohol and impulse destroyed everything. Back in Ohio, he was different, colder, quieter, smarter. This time, he wouldn't be sloppy. He knew what worked, what felt right. The dark psychological horror inside him was no longer confusing. It was comforting. He began stalking again, searching for someone who wouldn't be missed. No more accident, no more hesitation, just hunger. Every shadowed alley, every lone figure, it all looked like opportunity. He craved the feeling, the silence after death, and he promised himself, next time, he wouldn't wait so long. Milwaukee was bigger, louder, but lonelier. Dahmer moved there hoping to disappear into the crowd, but his true nature followed. Bars, bus stops, bookstores, he scouted quietly. He watched, learned. Young men, often gay, often black, often overlooked. His victims weren't random, they were chosen. And in 1987, the silence shattered again. Stephen Twomey. Jeffrey didn't remember killing him, just waking up beside a lifeless body. But the aftermath felt familiar. This wasn't chaos. It was becoming routine. He bought a suitcase, stuffed it inside, cleaned the room. Milwaukee didn't notice. The city just kept breathing, and so did the monster. Because now, killing wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of what he really wanted. It was no longer just killing, it was keeping. Dahmer started experimenting with bones, flesh, and memories. He posed his victims, photographed them, preserved parts in acid and freezers. He wasn't just hiding bodies, he was building trophies, a shrine, a private museum of control. One by one, his victims vanished into the dark, but they stayed with him in pieces. Neighbors complained of smells. Police knocked, but never searched. Jeffrey smiled politely, then returned to his rituals. Each act became more perverse. He drilled holes, poured acid, tried turning victims into zombies. Love, to him, meant possession, permanent and silent. And now, the fear wasn't of being caught. It was of stopping. The monster needed to feed. By 1991, his apartment had turned into a graveyard disguised as a home. Blood stained the floors, acid stung the air, and inside the fridge, heads, hearts, horror. But he was careful, still soft-spoken, still blending in, until Tracy Edwards stepped inside. A near victim, Jeffrey tried the same methods, drinks, handcuffs, drugs. But something went wrong. Tracy fought back, escaped, ran barefoot through the streets, waving down police. And finally, someone listened. Officers entered the apartment. The smell hit first, then photos, then heads, then nightmares. The world finally saw the face of America's most chilling predator. And in that moment, it wasn't just a crime scene. It was a portal into a soul with no light left. The trial wasn't about innocence. It was about understanding how a quiet man became a serial killer. Jeffrey Dahmer admitted everything. No denial, no theatrics. He described each murder in calm detail, horrifying the world. But his voice was flat. No remorse, just fact. The court declared him sane, responsible. Families wept. Reporters froze. The world labeled him a monster, but Dahmer didn't fight it. In 1994, an inmate ended it, beating him to death in prison. There was no glory in the ending, just relief. The case was closed, but the question remained. What made Jeffrey Dahmer? Evil? Illness? Or something worse? Emptiness? And while the answers fade, the memory never does. His first crime was just a whisper. What followed was the scream.